The metallic clang of steel striking steel echoed across the vast chamber. Jack Reynolds, his weathered face glistening with sweat, parried another blow from the towering Zephyrian guard. The alien's silver armor reflected the emergency lights flashing throughout the ship, casting eerie red shadows across its insectoid features. "Stay behind me," Jack shouted to the three small blue-skinned children cowering against the bulkhead. The smallest one whimpered, its large iridescent eyes wide with terror. The Zephyrian guard lunged forward, its serrated blade missing Jack's throat by inches. With the practiced precision of a man who'd faced death before, Jack pivoted, using his opponent's momentum against him. In one fluid motion, he slammed the guard's armored head against the metal wall, the impact reverberating through the corridor. "We can't stay here," Jack gasped, turning to the children. "They're coming." The tallest child, Alara, clutched her siblings close. "The escape pods are this way," she said, her translator device giving her voice an artificial calm that belied the fear in her eyes. As alarm klaxons blared overhead, Jack wondered how a simple act of kindness, feeding hungry children, had led to this moment fighting for his life aboard an alien warship. And it had all started with a bowl of soup. 6 months earlier, the neon sign of the Starlight Diner flickered weakly, casting a pale blue glow across the polished steel floor of Concourse C. Located at the far end of New Houston Space Station, the diner sat in the shadow of a massive transit hub that once funneled thousands of travelers daily through this section. Now, with the new Galactic Assembly Complex completed on the other side of the station, this area had become a forgotten backwater. Jack Reynolds wiped down the counter for the third time that hour, more out of habit than necessity. At 58, his once powerful frame still commanded respect, though decades of hard living had etched deep lines around his eyes and silver streaks through his close-cropped hair. The sleeve of his right arm was rolled up, revealing the faded USMC tattoo, a remnant of another life. "Coffee black," came a gruff voice as the diner's only customer slid onto a stool. Station Security Officer Briggs, ending another 12-hour shift, had become a regular in recent months, perhaps out of pity. "Coming up," Jack replied, his deep voice carrying the faint rasp of a man who'd once shouted orders over gunfire. He poured the coffee with practiced precision, sliding it across the counter without spilling a drop. "Anything worth reporting today?" Jack asked, falling into their familiar routine. Briggs grunted, taking a long sip. "More dignitaries arriving for the Assembly Summit. Security's tighter than a vacuum seal. Got Centaurians, Rigelians, even a delegation of Zephyrians coming in tomorrow." Jack's eyebrow raised slightly at the mention of Zephyrians. 5 years after first contact, humanity was still getting accustomed to the vast tapestry of alien civilizations that made up the Galactic Assembly. Some species, like the diplomatic Centaurians, had embraced cultural exchange. Others, like the militaristic Zephyrians, remained aloof, their towering blue-skinned forms and cold analytical demeanor earning them comparisons to the Soviet officials of the Cold War era. Zephyrians, huh? Thought they considered Earth too primitive for diplomatic relations. Briggs leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Word is their High Governor herself is coming. Nara Vex, first time a Zephyrian of her rank has bothered with us. Something big's happening." Jack nodded, absorbing the information, while maintaining his impassive expression, a skill honed during interrogations in the Gulf War. The station's gossip network was often more reliable than official channels, and Briggs was plugged directly into it. The officer downed his coffee, checked his watch, and tossed a few credits onto the counter. "Keep your head down, Reynolds. Station's going to be crawling with security details and bureaucrats with something to prove." "Always do," Jack replied, watching as Briggs lumbered out the pneumatic door, hissing closed behind him. Alone again in the empty diner, Jack turned to the small terminal mounted beside the kitchen entrance, its screen displaying the day's earnings. The numbers confirmed what he already knew: another day of losses. At this rate, the Starlight Diner would be closed within 3 months. Jack's weathered hand lingered over the terminal, a gold wedding band still adorning his finger despite being widowed for over a decade. How had it come to this, from decorated Marine captain to acclaimed New York chef, and now the proprietor of a failing diner on humanity's first major space station? The answer came unbidden, a flash of memory, his restaurant in flames, newspaper headlines, screaming accusations of negligence, his daughter's funeral held in the rain. Jack closed his eyes, willing the images away, focusing instead on the familiar hum of the diner's ventilation system. The soft chime of the entrance sensor interrupted his dark thoughts. "We're closing in 15, he called, without turning, assuming it was Briggs, returning for something forgotten. No response came. Jack turned and for the first time in years found himself genuinely surprised. Three small figures stood just inside the doorway, their slender frames casting long shadows across the floor. They weren't human. Standing approximately 4 feet tall, the aliens had sleek blue-tinted skin with subtle iridescent patterns that shifted with their movements. Their elongated limbs moved with a grace that seemed almost choreographed, and their large almond-shaped eyes, entirely silver with no visible pupils, regarded Jack with what he could only interpret as apprehension. Zephyrian children. Jack had seen adult Zephyrians in news broadcasts, towering, imposing figures that rarely interacted with humans outside of formal diplomatic settings. But children, never. And certainly not wandering unescorted through the least prestigious section of New Houston Station. "Hello," Jack said, keeping his voice neutral as he wiped his hands on his apron. "Welcome to the Starlight Diner." The tallest of the three stepped forward. A small translucent disc hung from a chain around the child's neck, a standard-issue universal translator. When the child spoke, a series of melodic clicks and trills emerged, followed by the translator's slightly mechanical rendering in English. "We have currency units." The translator gave the voice a feminine quality as she held up a standard Galactic credit chip. "We require sustenance." Jack studied the children more carefully. Despite their alien features, he recognized the universal signs of exhaustion and hunger, the slight trembling of limbs, the dulled sheen of their skin, the way the smallest one leaned against its sibling for support. "I can make you something to eat." Jack nodded. "Do you have any particular preferences?" The three exchanged looks, their silver eyes blinking rapidly in what Jack assumed was their species' form of silent communication. "We are unfamiliar with Earth cuisine," the tallest one replied. "We require protein and carbohydrates compatible with Zephyrian physiology." Jack scratched the back of his neck. "I don't know much about Zephyrian dietary needs. Let me check the database." He turned to his terminal, accessing the xenobiological information that had been made available to food service establishments as part of Earth's integration into the galactic community. After a moment of scanning, he turned back to his unusual customers. "Looks like you can eat most Earth proteins and carbohydrates. You need to avoid dairy and nightshades, that's things like tomatoes and peppers, but otherwise you're compatible with our food." Jack gestured toward a booth. "Why don't you take a seat? I'll make you something simple to start." The children moved with cautious precision to the indicated booth, climbing onto the seats with careful movements. Jack noted their clothing, plain gray jumpsuits with no identifying marks or adornments. They looked like standard-issue uniforms rather than what he'd expect children to wear. As he moved to the kitchen, decades of military training kicked in, and Jack began cataloging anomalies. Zephyrian children alone in the most neglected part of the station, dressed in generic clothing, showing signs of hunger. The adult delegation not arriving until tomorrow. None of it added up to anything good. Jack set a pot of water to boil for rice and removed a package of chicken from the cooler. As he worked, he observed the children through the serving window. They sat rigidly at first, but gradually began to relax, looking around the diner with what appeared to be curiosity. The smallest one pointed at the vintage jukebox in the corner, and they engaged in what seemed to be an animated, silent discussion. 20 minutes later, Jack emerged with 3 plates of simple grilled chicken, steamed rice, and a medley of vegetables carefully selected to avoid anything potentially harmful to Zephyrian biology. He arranged the food with the unconscious precision of a former high-end chef, adding a sprig of herb for color. "Here you go," he said, placing the plates before them. "Careful, it's hot." The children stared at the food with wide silver eyes. After a moment of hesitation, the tallest one picked up a fork with her 4-fingered hand and cautiously took a bite of chicken. Her eyes widened and she made a soft trilling sound that the translator didn't convert. "Is it okay?" Jack asked, concerned he'd made some cultural or dietary mistake. "It is." The child paused, seemingly searching for the right word. "Pleasurable. The texture and flavor are harmonious." Jack felt a small smile form, the first genuine one in longer than he cared to remember. "That's good to hear. It's just simple food, but I'm glad you like it." The other 2 children began eating as well, and Jack observed with growing concern how they started slowly but quickly accelerated to a pace that suggested they hadn't eaten properly in some time. I'm Jack, by the way, he said, pulling up a chair from a nearby table. Jack Reynolds, what are your names? Again, that moment of silent communication before the tallest answered. I am Alara, she said, then gestured to the middle and smallest child respectively. These are my siblings, Mirren and Tasso. Nice to meet you all, Jack nodded. If you don't mind me asking what brings you to this part of the station, it's pretty far from the assembly complex. The children tensed visibly. Alara placed her fork down with deliberate care. We are exploring, she said finally. Our guardian is occupied with assembly matters. We were curious about human settlements. Jack's internal alarms rang louder. 20 years in the Marines had taught him to recognize a rehearsed cover story regardless of the species delivering it. Well, you've wandered pretty far, he said carefully. This isn't exactly a tourist destination. Does your guardian know where you are? The children exchanged another look, and this time, Jack was certain he saw worry in their alien expressions. Our current location is undisclosed, Alara admitted after a pause. We will return before our absence is detected. Runaways, the realization settled in Jack's mind with absolute certainty. Whatever their reasons, these children had fled from their guardian's supervision. Before Jack could press further, a commotion outside caught his attention. Through the diner's front window, he spotted two human men stumbling down the concourse, cargo workers from the loading docks, by the look of their uniforms and clearly intoxicated. One man pointed toward the diner, nudging his companion. Jack recognized the expression that crossed their faces, the ugly mixture of curiosity and hostility that too often greeted non-human visitors to the station. Finish your food, Jack said quietly to the children. We might have a situation. The pneumatic door hissed open as the two men entered, their alcohol-fueled confidence filling the small diner with an immediate tension. The taller one, a burly man with a shaved head and a cargo company logo on his jacket, swaggered toward the booth where the children sat. Well, look what we got here, he slurred, leaning over the table. Baby Blues having dinner in our neighborhood. The children shrank back, Tasso the smallest letting out a soft whimper of fear. That's enough, Jack said, his voice dropping to the commanding tone he'd used when leading Marines into combat. They're paying customers. Leave them be, says. The cargo worker turned, sizing Jack up. Since when does Earth serve the enemy, old man? These Zephyrians look down on us, treat us like we're dirt, and now they're sending their spawn to scope us out. Jack stepped closer, positioning himself between the man and the children. They're kids having dinner. Walk away now and we'll forget this happened. The second man, shorter but equally intoxicated, joined his friend. We fought wars to keep Earth for humans. My grandpa died in Iraq. Now we're supposed to share our station with alien scum. Last warning, Jack said, his voice dangerously calm. Walk away. The taller man lunged forward, grabbing for Alara's arm. Let's see what the Blues really look. He never finished the sentence. Jack moved with the fluid efficiency of a combat veteran. His left hand caught the man's outstretched arm, redirecting its momentum, while his right delivered a precise strike to the solar plexus. The cargo worker crumpled, gasping for air. His companion swung wildly, a clumsy punch that Jack easily sidestepped. A quick sweep of Jack's leg, and the second man joined his friend on the floor. Station security is 3 minutes out if I call them, Jack said calmly, looking down at the winded men. I suggest you be elsewhere by then. The men scrambled to their feet, the sobering effect of pain and humiliation clear in their eyes. They backed toward the door, the taller one pointing a trembling finger. This ain't over, old man. People need to know you're harboring them. After they departed, Jack turned to find the children staring at him with what he interpreted as awe. You engaged in physical combat to protect us, Alara said, her translator, failing to mask the wonder in her voice. Jack shrugged, feeling the old familiar ache in his shoulder, a souvenir from Fallujah. They were out of line. No one should threaten children regardless of species. Among Zephyrians, Alara said hesitantly, adults rarely intervene on behalf of offspring. Something in her tone made Jack's blood run cold. He studied her more carefully, noticing for the first time the faint discoloration along her neck, bruising perhaps, though it was difficult to tell with their alien physiology. Are you in some kind of trouble? He asked, keeping his voice gentle. Is that why you're running? The three children exchanged looks, again a silent debate, clearly taking place. Finally, Alara spoke. Zephyrian tradition dictates that offspring must demonstrate self-sufficiency from an early developmental stage. Food allocation is restricted to encourage adaptation. Jack's jaw tightened as he processed the implication. They're starving you as some kind of test. It is our way, Alara replied, though her silver eyes dropped to the table. Those who adapt survive. Those who do not. She left the sentence unfinished. Jack had seen enough suffering in his lifetime to recognize it across species barriers. The bruising, the hunger, the fear of these children weren't just exploring, they were fleeing abuse. How long have you been on the station? He asked. We arrived yesterday on an advanced transport. Mirren, the middle child, spoke for the first time. The primary delegation arrives tomorrow. Jack nodded, thinking quickly. And your guardian, are they part of the advanced team or the main delegation? Primary delegation, Alara answered. We were placed under supervision of security personnel until tomorrow. The situation was becoming clearer and more troubling. These children had escaped from their handlers and had been wandering the station for hours, possibly longer. When do you need to be back before you're missed? The security shift changes at 100 station time, Alara said. If we return before then, our absence may remain undetected. Jack checked the chronometer on the wall. Just after 2200 hours. 8 hours then. A series of rapid decisions formed in Jack's mind. Military training had taught him to assess situations quickly, to identify threats and resources, to formulate plans under pressure. These skills had served him in combat zones from Kuwait to Afghanistan, and now unexpectedly in a failing diner on New Houston Station. I need to make a call, he said, moving toward the small office behind the counter. Keep eating. In the privacy of the office, Jack activated his personal comm unit, scrolling through his contacts until he found the one he needed. After a moment, a woman's face appeared on the small screen, her dark hair streaked with gray eyes sharp despite being clearly woken from sleep. Jack, Dr. Amanda Clark, squinted at her screen. It's nearly midnight. What's wrong, Amanda? Jack kept his voice low. I need your expertise, confidentially. Dr. Clark's expression sharpened immediately. They'd served together during the Gulf War, she as a combat medic, he as a Marine captain. 2 decades of shared history allowed for immediate understanding. What kind of expertise? Xenobiology, specifically Zephyrian physiology. Zephyrian. Her eyebrows rose. That's specific and classified. Where are you even encountering Zephyrians? I have 3 Zephyrian children in my diner right now, Jack said. I need to know if what they're telling me about their species' childcare practices is accurate or if something worse is happening. Clark's expression darkened. Give me 15 minutes. I'll be there. While waiting for Amanda, Jack returned to the main dining area. The children had finished their meals, their plates nearly cleaned. Would you like some more? He offered. The children looked at each other, and then Alara nodded cautiously. If permitted. Jack's heart clenched at the hesitation in her voice. Of course it's permitted. This is a diner, feeding people is what we do. He prepared second servings, adding slightly larger portions this time. As the children ate, Jack began asking casual questions, building a clearer picture of their situation. They were from the Zephyrian homeworld, brought to accompany the diplomatic delegation as part of their developmental training. Their guardian was a high-ranking official who would arrive with the main delegation tomorrow. The bruises came from corrective physical guidance when they failed to meet expectations. Each answer reinforced Jack's growing conviction that these children were victims of systematic abuse cloaked under the guise of cultural tradition. The door chimed and Dr. Amanda Clark entered, medical bag in hand. At 55, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had treated wounds under artillery fire. Now the station's leading xenobiologist, she'd been one of the first human doctors to train in alien physiology after first contact. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of the 3 Zephyrian children, but she quickly composed herself, nodding a greeting to Jack. Dr. Clark, Jack said formally, these are my guests, Alara, Mirren, and Tasso. Amanda approached slowly, smiling. Hello, I'm a doctor here on the station. Would it be all right if I check to make sure you're healthy? The children looked to Alara, who hesitated before nodding. Medical assessment is acceptable. With gentle efficiency, Amanda examined each child using a handheld scanner to assess their vital signs and physical condition. Her expression remained professional, but Jack could read the growing concern in her eyes. After completing her examination, Amanda joined Jack at the counter, speaking quietly. They're malnourished, Jack. All three show signs of extended caloric restriction. The oldest has multiple partially healed contusions, consistent with physical discipline, and their stress hormone levels are off the charts. She shook her head. Whatever's happening to these kids, it's not just cultural differences. Jack's jaw tightened. That's what I thought. Alara says it's Zephyrian tradition to restrict food for children as some kind of survival test. Amanda's expression darkened. I've studied Zephyrian physiology. Their metabolism is highly efficient, but their developing nervous systems require consistent nutrition. Deliberate starvation would cause permanent neurological damage. She glanced back at the children. This goes beyond harsh cultural practices. It's abuse, plain and simple. What are our options? Jack asked. Limited, Amanda admitted. Zephyrian diplomatic personnel have immunity, and interfering with alien cultural practices is a political minefield. Since First Contact Earth has been walking on eggshells to maintain our standing in the assembly. So we do nothing. Jack's voice carried a dangerous edge. I didn't say that, Amanda replied, but we need to be careful. The diplomatic summit starting tomorrow is critical for Earth's position in the assembly. One misstep could set human-alien relations back years. Jack was about to respond when his comm unit buzzed. He checked the message and frowned. Station security alert, he said. They're conducting a sweep through this section, looking for 3 missing Zephyrian miners. Amanda's eyes widened. That was fast. Someone high up must have ordered this search. Jack made a decision. We need to hide them, at least until we figure out what's happening and what we can do. Hide them where security has authorization to search every public space on this level. Jack moved to the kitchen, waving for Amanda to follow. Behind the industrial refrigeration unit, he pressed a section of wall panel that looked identical to the others. With a soft hiss, a section of the wall slid back, revealing a narrow maintenance passage. Emergency access corridor, Jack explained, runs behind most of the commercial units in this section, left over from the station's military days before it was converted to civilian use. Amanda stared at the hidden doorway. How do you even know about this? I did 2 rotations of station security consulting after I left the Corps, Jack said. Before I opened this place, knew every emergency route and bolt hole on this level, figured it might come in handy someday. He returned to the dining area, approaching the children. Listen carefully, he said, kneeling to their level. People are looking for you. Security officers are searching this section right now. Fear flashed across their alien features. We cannot return yet. Ilara said, her voice tight. The consequences would be severe. I'm not going to let them take you back, Jack assured them. But I need you to trust me. We're going to hide you somewhere safe until we figure this out. The children exchanged looks, then Ilara nodded. We will comply. Jack led them to the kitchen and showed them the hidden passage. It's narrow but goes back about 20 meters to a maintenance junction. There's an environmental control room there that's rarely used. You'll be safe. I'll go with them, Amanda offered. Make sure they're comfortable and monitor their condition. Jack nodded gratefully. Take this, he said, handing her a small comm unit. Stay in contact. I'll deal with security when they come. As Amanda led the children into the passage, Jack caught Alara's arm gently. I promise you'll be safe, he said. I'll come for you as soon as I can. The small Zephyrian child looked up at him with silver eyes that somehow conveyed both fear and trust. Why are you assisting us? We are not of your species. The question caught Jack off guard with its directness. Because you needed help, he said simply. That's reason enough. After securing the hidden door, Jack quickly cleared away evidence of the children's presence, washing dishes and straightening the booth. He had barely finished when the diner's door slid open, revealing 2 station security officers flanked by a tall, imposing figure in gleaming silver armor. A Zephyrian security operative. The alien towered over the human officers, its elongated head swiveling to scan the diner with emotionless silver eyes. Unlike the children, this adult Zephyrian projected an aura of cold authority that filled the room like a physical presence. Jack Reynolds, one of the human officers, asked, consulting his datapad. That's me, Jack replied calmly, wiping his hands on his apron as he emerged from behind the counter. We're conducting a priority search for 3 Zephyrian miners who may have passed through this sector, the officer explained. Have you seen any Zephyrian children in the last 6 hours? Jack met the officer's gaze steadily. Can't say that I have. Not many aliens make their way to this part of the station these days. Business has been slow since they opened the new assembly complex. The Zephyrian stepped forward, its translator rendering its clicks and trills into a deep mechanical voice. Human, our tracking systems detected Zephyrian biosignatures in this vicinity less than 30 minutes ago. Jack shrugged. Your delegation has been arriving all day. Might be picking up signals from the main concourse. It's just on the other side of that wall. He gestured vaguely. The Zephyrian's silver eyes narrowed an unsettlingly human expression on its alien features. Without warning, it produced a handheld device and began sweeping the diner, the device emitting soft pulses of blue light. Hey, the human officer protested. We don't have authorization for a level 3 scan of a civilian establishment. The Zephyrian ignored him, continuing its methodical sweep until the device emitted a sharp beep near the booth where the children had eaten. Zephyrian biological residue, the alien announced. Recent presence confirmed. Jack maintained his neutral expression, though inwardly he cursed himself for not being more thorough in his cleanup. The Zephyrian approached Jack, looming over him. You have encountered the subjects we seek. Providing false information to a Galactic Assembly security operative is a violation of treaty statutes. Jack straightened to his full height, refusing to be intimidated despite the alien's considerable size advantage. I run a diner. People come and go. I don't interrogate my customers about their species or diplomatic status. The subjects are property of the Zephyrian hierarchy, the alien stated coldly. Their retrieval is imperative. Property, Jack repeated, unable to keep the edge from his voice. We're talking about children. The Zephyrian's head tilted slightly, a gesture Jack couldn't interpret. Your cultural perspective is irrelevant. Under Assembly Treaty guidelines, member species maintain sovereignty over their offspring. Non-interference in developmental protocols is mandated. The human officer cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mr. Reynolds, if you have any information about these individuals, you are obligated to share it. This is a diplomatic matter. Jack looked between the human officer, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, but bound by regulations and the imposing Zephyrian. 20 years of military discipline helped him maintain his composure. Like I said, I haven't seen any Zephyrian children. If they passed by outside, I wouldn't know. I've been in the kitchen most of the evening. The Zephyrian's translator rendered a series of sharp clicks that somehow conveyed skepticism without words. It stepped closer to Jack, its face inches from his. Human deception is inefficient, it stated. Your physiological indicators suggest falsification. The juveniles were here. You will disclose their current location. Jack met the alien's gaze unflinchingly. I've told you what I know. Unless you have a warrant, that's all you're getting from me. For a tense moment, the Zephyrian remained motionless, its silver eyes fixed on Jack. Then, with a fluid motion belying its size, it stepped back. This facility will be placed under surveillance, it announced. Departure from this location is restricted until further notice. The human officer looked surprised. We don't have authorization for that level of authorization granted under Zephyrian diplomatic security protocols, the alien interrupted. Assembly Treaty Section 47B grants operational autonomy in matters involving Zephyrian nationals. The officer looked unhappy but nodded reluctantly. Mr. Reynolds, please remain on premises until this matter is resolved. We'll post officers outside. After the security team departed, Jack waited several minutes before activating his comm unit. Amanda, he said quietly, we have a problem. They know the kids were here, and they've put the diner under surveillance. We're effectively locked down. I heard, Amanda's voice came through. The children are safe for now, but Jack, there's something else. Alara just told me who their guardian is. Who can you? Nara Vex, the High Governor herself. Amanda's voice was tight. Jack, these aren't just any Zephyrian children. They're the offspring of the most powerful Zephyrian in the Assembly. The revelation hit Jack like a physical blow. High Governor Nara Vex, the equivalent of a head of state in human terms. The leader whose arrival had the entire station on high alert. And her children were hiding in his maintenance tunnel, bearing the marks of systematic abuse. It gets worse, Amanda continued. According to Alara, there are other children, not just Zephyrian, being subjected to similar treatment. Apparently, multiple species in the assembly share these developmental traditions. It's widespread, Jack, and sanctioned at the highest levels. Jack moved to the diner's window, noting the security officer now positioned outside. Across the concourse, he spotted another officer and beyond the distinctive silver armor of the Zephyrian operative. He was trapped in his failing diner, harboring the children of one of the most powerful aliens in the galaxy with no clear path forward and security closing in. Yet strangely, for the first time in years, Jack felt a sense of purpose stirring within him, a feeling he'd thought long buried beneath grief and failure. "We need help," he said finally. "Someone with access to secure areas of the station. Someone who knows the political landscape." "I might know someone," Amanda replied after a moment. "Thomas Mitchell, former Air Force major, now works in station administrative security. We served together on the First Contact Advisory Committee. He has the clearance and the connections." "Can he be trusted?" With this, Amanda paused. "I think so. Tom's always been one for bending rules when the cause is right." "Make the call," Jack decided. "But be careful what you share until we're sure. In the meantime, those kids need proper food and medical attention." As he ended the communication, Jack moved to the kitchen and began preparing a more substantial meal for the children, protein-rich dishes that would help address their malnutrition. As he cooked, his mind worked through contingencies, escape routes, possible allies and enemies. The rhythms of cooking, the precise knife work, the timing of heat and ingredients had always helped him think, whether planning military operations or running a high-end restaurant. Now, as he prepared food for 3 alien children hiding in his walls, Jack Reynolds found himself confronting the question Alara had asked. Why was he helping them? The answer went beyond the simple explanation he had given her. These children had awakened something he'd thought dead since his daughter's funeral, the instinct to protect, to care for those who couldn't defend themselves. A purpose beyond mere survival. Outside, the security presence grew as additional officers arrived. Through the window, Jack watched as the sleek officials' transport pulled up to the concourse, disgorging more Zephyrian security personnel. The stakes were rising by the minute. Whatever happened next, Jack knew with absolute certainty that he would not allow these children to be returned to a system that viewed them as property to be starved and beaten, even if it meant standing against the entire Galactic Assembly. As the first rays of artificial dawn illuminated the station's exterior, through the viewport, Jack made his decision. The children would not be going back, not to abuse disguised as tradition, not to pain justified as development, no matter what it cost him. The Starlight Diner had never been designed as a safe house. Its gleaming chrome surfaces and expansive viewports, once selling points for the establishment, now felt like dangerous vulnerabilities as dawn broke over New Houston Station. Through the large front window, Jack Reynolds observed the growing security presence with the calculated calm of a veteran assessing a battlefield. 4 human officers now patrolled the concourse outside, while the imposing Zephyrian operative stood motionless near the main junction, silver armor reflecting the station's rising ambient light. The message was clear: no one in or out without scrutiny. Jack moved methodically through his morning routine, brewing coffee and prepping ingredients as if it were any normal day. His actions were for the benefit of the watchers outside, a performance of normalcy, while his mind calculated contingencies and escape routes with military precision. The small comm unit in his pocket vibrated. Jack casually walked to the refrigeration unit, using its bulk to shield him from view as he answered. "The children are stable." Dear Amanda Clark's voice came through in a hushed tone. "I've administered nutrient supplements to address the worst of the malnutrition, but Alara's injuries need proper medical attention." "How bad?" Jack kept his voice low, his back to the window. "The bruising extends to her thoracic region. There might be microfractures in her equivalent of ribs. She's in pain, but hiding it from the younger ones." Jack's jaw tightened, the muscle in his cheek pulsing with suppressed anger. "What about Mitchell?" "Any word?" He's coming. Should be there within the hour. Used his security clearance to create a legitimate reason to inspect your section." There was a pause. "Jack, Alara's been telling me more about their situation. It's worse than we thought." "Worse how?" "The developmental traditions aren't just about food restriction. The Zephyrian elite use their children as test subjects for genetic modifications. Alara says they're injected with experimental compounds to enhance certain traits. The ones who react poorly are—" Amanda's voice faltered. "They're called Jack, removed from the genetic line." The information landed like a physical blow. Jack had seen atrocities during his military career. Ethnic cleansing in the Balkans, civilian casualties in the Gulf War, but the clinical coldness of systematically experimenting on and eliminating children struck a particular horror. How many? He asked, his voice hardening. Alara doesn't know exactly. Dozens, at least. And not just Zephyrians. She says several species in the Assembly's upper echelons practice similar methods. It's seen as a way of accelerating evolution. Jack closed his eyes briefly, decades-old training, helping him compartmentalize the emotional response, focusing instead on immediate necessities. We need to move them. This place is too exposed. To where the entire station is on high alert. The Zephyrian delegation arrived an hour ago, and they have prioritized finding these children above everything else. Every transport hub, every major junction has been placed under surveillance. And then we don't use the major junctions. Jack said, a plan beginning to form. The station was built in sections. The original military framework had maintenance corridors running between major compartments. Most were sealed during the civilian conversion, but some are still accessible. Even if we could move them, where would they go? Hiding 3 alien children on a space station isn't exactly inconspicuous. One problem at a time, Jack replied. Wait for Mitchell. A sharp knock at the diner's front door interrupted him. Jack quickly pocketed the comm unit and turned to see an older man in the gray uniform of station administrative security standing outside. Tall and lean with close-cropped silver hair and the erect posture of career military, Major Thomas Mitchell carried himself with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to command. Jack moved to the door, unlocking it manually rather than using the automated system. Major, he greeted, formally aware of the watching security personnel. Mr. Reynolds, Mitchell replied with equal formality. Station security has authorized an inspection of your establishment following reports of code violations. It was a transparent cover story. There had been no such reports, but delivered with enough official certainty to satisfy the observers. Jack stepped aside, allowing Mitchell to enter before securing the door again. Once inside, the major's demeanor shifted subtly, his voice dropping. Amanda briefed me, partially, said you were harboring 3 Zephyrian children and needed extraction options. Jack studied the man carefully. At around 60, Mitchell had the weathered look of someone who'd seen enough of the universe to develop a healthy skepticism toward authority. His eyes, sharp and assessing, moved systematically around the diner, noting exits, cover points, and potential vulnerabilities with a professional's efficiency. That's the simplified version, Jack confirmed. The full story involves child abuse, genetic experimentation, and the high governor of the Zephyrian hierarchy. Mitchell's eyebrows rose slightly. Naravex's children, Christ Reynolds. When you pick a fight, you aim straight for the top. I didn't go looking for this fight. 3 starving, beaten kids walked into my diner. Everything else followed. Mitchell nodded, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. Always did have a soft spot for the underdog, didn't you? I remember the stories from Kuwait, the village you diverted supplies to against orders. You've done your homework. I make it a point to know who I'm dealing with. Mitchell moved toward the counter, maintaining the appearance of conducting an inspection. The situation is complicated. Earth signed the Non-Interference in Cultural Practices Treaty 3 years ago. It was a prerequisite for our membership in the Assembly. What kind of treaty sanctions child abuse? Jack asked, his voice carrying an edge. The kind negotiated by politicians who were more concerned with securing interstellar trade routes than examining the fine print. Mitchell's tone was matter-of-fact rather than judgmental. The treaty gives member species complete sovereignty over their familial and developmental practices. No interference allowed, regardless of how they conflict with human ethical standards. Jack's expression darkened. So Earth's official position is to look the other way. Earth's official position is to maintain our standing in the Assembly at all costs. We're the new kids at the Galactic table, Reynolds. The powers that be are terrified of doing anything that might jeopardize our position. Mitchell sighed. But off the record, there are people in the administration who have concerns about certain Assembly practices. People who've been documenting discrepancies between public declarations and private actions. People like you, Mitchell gave a barely perceptible nod. Let me see the children. Jack led him to the hidden passage, activating the concealed door mechanism. The narrow corridor beyond was dimly lit by emergency lighting strips along the floor. They proceeded in silence until reaching the environmental control room, where Amanda waited with the three Zephyrian children. The small maintenance space had been converted into a makeshift medical area. Amanda had created bedding from spare linens, and the children sat huddled together on this improvised nest. Alara, the oldest, positioned herself protectively in front of her siblings, her silver eyes widening at the sight of Mitchell's uniform. "It's okay," Jack said quickly. "He's here to help." Mitchell approached, slowly kneeling to bring himself to the children's level, a deliberate effort to appear less threatening. "Hello," he said, his voice gentler than before. "I'm Tom Mitchell. I understand you've had a difficult time." Alara regarded him warily. "You are a security official. Your duty is to return us to the hierarchy." "My duty, Seed," Mitchell replied carefully, "is to protect everyone on this station, including you." The child's silver eyes studied him with unsettling intensity. Many humans have claimed to offer protection. Few have honored such claims when confronted with Zephyrian authority. It was a remarkably adult observation delivered with the bitter certainty of personal experience. Mitchell glanced at Jack, something unreadable passing between the two veterans. "I've seen your injuries," Mitchell said, returning his attention to Alara. "And Dr. Clark has told me some of what you've experienced. I believe you're in danger and I want to help. But I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." Alara hesitated, looking to Jack as if seeking reassurance. When he nodded encouragingly, she straightened her slender frame with a dignity that belied her young age. "Our Mother High Governor Naravex oversees the Genetic Advancement Initiative. All elite Zephyrian offspring undergo enhancement procedures from early development. Those who demonstrate optimal responses continue the process. Those who do not—" She paused, her translator unable to fully capture the emotion in her melodic language. "They disappear." "And you three," Mitchell prompted gently, "Mirren and Tasso have shown favorable responses to the treatments. I have not. My last evaluation indicated suboptimal neurological adaptation. I was scheduled for final assessment upon arrival at the assembly complex." Alara's silver eyes dropped. Final assessments are seldom survived. The clinical detachment with which the child described her likely execution sent a chill through the room. Jack's hands curled into fists at his sides, an action not missed by Mitchell. "How widespread is this practice?" the Major asked. "Standard among the governing classes of 7 assembly species. The Zephyrian hierarchy pioneered the methodology. Other species adopted similar approaches after observing our accelerated development." Mitchell's expression remained neutral, but Jack noted the tightening around his eyes, the subtle tell of a man processing disturbing information while maintaining professional composure. "And your escape? How did you manage to get away from your handlers?" Ilara's posture shifted slightly. "Pride, perhaps. I have been planning for 63 cycles. Our transport arrived before the main delegation. During the transfer to temporary quarters, I exploited a scheduling overlap in the security rotation. We exited through a maintenance hatch and proceeded through secondary corridors." "Smart," Mitchell acknowledged with newfound respect. "But they're searching for you now. The entire station is on alert, and your mother has made your return a condition of continuing diplomatic relations." "We cannot return," Alara said, her voice taking on a desperate edge. "Mirren and Tasso would be subjected to increased treatment intensity. I would be eliminated as defective." Jack stepped forward. "They're not going back. Not while I'm breathing." The former Marine's declaration hung in the air, its implications clear to everyone present. Mitchell studied him for a long moment before nodding almost imperceptibly. "The Zephyrian delegation has scheduled a station-wide address in 3 hours. Security will be focused on the assembly complex, creating temporary blind spots in surveillance." He turned back to the children. "If we're going to move you, that's our window." "Move us where?" Alara asked. "I maintain a private residence in the old military section," Mitchell explained. "Level 47 Blue Sector. It's isolated, secure, and off most official schematics. Not even station security conducts regular patrols there." Jack frowned. "Getting from here to Blue Sector means crossing at least 2 major junctions. They'll be watching those?" "Not if we use the original emergency evacuation routes," Mitchell countered. "Most were sealed during the civilian conversion, but some of us in administrative security made sure certain pathways remained accessible. Call it professional paranoia." "Those routes aren't on any current station maps," Jack noted. Mitchell's mouth quirked in a hint of a smile. "Benefits of being the old guard Reynolds. We remember what the politicians try to forget. For the next hour, they plan the extraction in meticulous detail. Mitchell's knowledge of the station's original military layout proved invaluable, revealing access points and blind spots unknown to standard security protocols. Jack drew on his combat experience to identify potential choke points and diversion tactics. Amanda, meanwhile, prepared the children for travel, administering additional nutrients and creating specialized packs containing essential medical supplies and food. The youngest is showing signs of severe fatigue, she informed Jack privately. These children have remarkably efficient metabolisms, but they've been pushed far beyond normal endurance. They need proper rest and sustained nutrition. Jack nodded, his gaze shifting to where Tasso lay curled against Alara, the small alien child's breathing shallow but steady. They'll get it, one way or another. As Mitchell prepared to leave, needing to maintain his cover and prepare the safe house, Jack followed him to the hidden passage entrance. "There's something you're not telling me," Jack said quietly, "about the treaty or the Zephyrians. What is it?" Mitchell hesitated, glancing back to ensure they weren't overheard. "There's a faction within Earth's government that believes the Zephyrians and several other founding assembly species have been using the treaty to conduct illegal genetic research, the kind prohibited even under their own laws. Research on children and others, prisoners, lower caste members of their own species, even certain human subjects who volunteered for cultural exchange programs." Mitchell's expression hardened. "We've been collecting evidence, building a case to present to the neutral assembly adjudicators. But it's been slow going. These species have had interstellar capabilities for centuries, Reynolds. They've perfected the art of hiding their darker practices. And now 3 living witnesses just walked into my diner. Exactly. These children, especially the oldest, could provide testimony that would force an assembly investigation. But only if we can keep them live and get them to the right people." The implication hung heavily between them. They weren't just hiding children from abuse. They were protecting key witnesses in what could become an interstellar diplomatic incident. "Who can we trust?" Jack asked. "On this station, very few. I have a small network, people who've seen enough to question the official narrative. But we have to assume most officials are either compromised or unwilling to risk Earth's standing in the assembly." Jack processed this decades of military training, automatically calculating increased threat levels and diminished resources. "How long until your safe house is ready?" 2 hours. I'll send a secure signal when it's time to move." Mitchell paused at the entrance to the passage. "Reynolds, you need to understand what you're getting into. If we're caught harboring these children against an official repatriation order, best case is life imprisonment for treaty violation. Worst case," he left the sentence unfinished. Jack's expression remained impassive. "I've been living on borrowed time since Fallujah. Makes the risk calculation pretty simple." Mitchell studied him for a long moment before nodding. "I'll be in touch." After Mitchell departed, Jack returned to Amanda and the children. 2 hours until we move. We should prepare them." "Alara's been asking questions," Amanda said quietly. "About Earth, about our customs, particularly about how we treat children." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That we're imperfect, that child abuse still exists in our society, but that we consider it criminal, rather than cultural." Amanda glanced toward the children. She seemed surprised by the concept. Jack approached the small group, noticing how Alara positioned herself to shield her siblings, a protective instinct that transcended species. He knelt before them, meeting the oldest child's silver gaze directly. "In 2 hours, we're going to move you to somewhere safer," he explained. "It will be dangerous. We'll need to move quickly and quietly. Can you do that?" Alara nodded, her translator, rendering her response with mechanical precision. "We are accustomed to moving silently. It was necessary in the breeding facilities." The casual reference to breeding facilities sent another wave of cold anger through Jack, but he maintained his composure. "Good. Dr. Clark has prepared packs with supplies. Each of you will carry one. If we get separated, stay hidden and use this." He handed Alara a small comm unit. "It's pre-programmed to reach me or Dr. Clark." The child examined the device with evident curiosity. "Your technology is primitive but functional." Jack couldn't suppress a small smile at the assessment. "We make do with what we have." "Why?" Alara asked suddenly, her silver eyes fixing on Jack with unnerving intensity. Why are you risking punishment to assist us? The directness of the question caught Jack off guard. He considered deflecting, but recognized the genuine need for understanding behind the inquiry. Because what's happening to you is wrong, he said simply. It doesn't matter what species you are or what treaties say, hurting children is wrong. Even if it advances the species, even if it produces superior generations. No advancement is worth sacrificing children, Jack replied firmly. Any society that builds its future on the suffering of its youngest members has already failed, whether they realize it or not. Alara processed this, her head tilting slightly, in what Jack had come to recognize as her contemplative gesture. Among Zephyrians, offspring are considered resources, not individuals. Your perspective is alien. Maybe that's what both our species need right now, a more alien perspective. The conversation was interrupted by Amanda's return from checking the maintenance corridor. Security patrols are increasing, she reported. They brought in scanning equipment. We might not have as much time as Mitchell thought. Jack nodded immediately, shifting to tactical assessment. We need a diversion, something to draw attention away from this section when we move. The environmental systems, Amanda suggested. I could trigger a localized atmospheric anomaly in the adjacent section. Nothing dangerous, but enough to trigger alarms and redirect security resources. Do it, Jack decided. Set it for 90 minutes from now. That gives us a head start if Mitchell's timeline holds, or an earlier window if we need to move sooner. As Amanda began reprogramming the environmental controls, Jack's comm unit activated with an urgent vibration pattern, the emergency signal he and Mitchell had established. He answered immediately. Change of plans. Mitchell's voice came through tense and hurried. They've accelerated the security sweeps. They'll reach your section in 30 minutes, not 3 hours. What happened? The Zephyrian High Governor moved up her schedule. She's personally overseeing the search now. And Reynolds, she's brought something with her, some kind of biotechnical tracking device. It can supposedly detect Zephyrian DNA signatures through standard shielding. Jack cursed under his breath. How close is your safe house to being ready? It's ready enough, but getting there just got a lot more complicated. They've stationed guards at every junction leading to Blue Sector. Jack thought quickly, years of combat experience, allowing him to reassess and adapt on the fly. The old freight tunnels, level 38 to 42, they were used for moving heavy equipment during the station's construction. Those were sealed years ago. Not all of them. When I consulted on station security, I mapped several that were officially decommissioned but still structurally intact. Maintenance uses them occasionally for large equipment transfers. When there was a pause as Mitchell considered this, it could work, but you'd need access codes for the service elevators. I have them, Jack confirmed. Never deleted my consultant credentials from the system. Figured they might come in handy someday. All right, get to Maintenance Junction 38C. I'll meet you there with additional supplies. And Reynolds, move fast. Once that tracking device is fully calibrated, there won't be many places to hide. Jack ended the communication and turned to Amanda. Plans have changed. We move now. Trigger your diversion in 10 minutes. Within moments, they had gathered their supplies and prepared the children for travel. Jack led the way into the maintenance corridor, his movements precise and efficient as he guided them through the dimly lit passage. Years of combat experience had taught him to move silently despite his size, and he was impressed to see the Zephyrian children matching his stealth. They reached a junction where the maintenance corridor intersected with a larger service tunnel. Jack paused, listening intently before proceeding. The service tunnel extended 50 meters before ending at a heavy-pressure door marked with faded military designations. This leads to the original evacuation network, Jack explained quietly. The tunnels were designed to allow rapid movement of personnel during emergencies. Most were sealed when the station was converted to civilian use, but this section remains operational for maintenance access. He approached the control panel beside the door and entered a long sequence of numbers from memory. The panel blinked red, then green, and the massive door began to slide open with a low hydraulic hiss. Once we're through, we'll need to move quickly, Jack instructed. The system will register the door activation. They'll investigate, even with Amanda's diversion. As if on cue, alarm klaxons began sounding from the direction of the diner, Amanda's atmospheric anomaly taking effect. Jack nodded in grim satisfaction. The diversion would buy them precious minutes. They passed through the pressure door into a much larger tunnel, easily 5 meters wide, with track systems embedded in the floor for equipment transport. Emergency lighting cast everything in a dim blue glow, creating elongated shadows that moved with them like silent companions. "This way," Jack directed, leading them down the tunnel at a brisk pace. The children kept up admirably, though Jack noticed Tasso, the smallest, beginning to lag. Without breaking stride, he lifted the child onto his back. The young Zephyrian weighed surprisingly little, even considering its small size. "Efficient skeletal density," Amanda explained, noting Jack's expression. "Zephyrian bone structure is significantly lighter than human, with comparable strength." They continued for several hundred meters before reaching an intersection where the main tunnel branched into three separate passages. Jack consulted a small handheld device, a portable schematic display he'd retrieved from his office. Left tunnel, he decided. It leads directly to junction 38C. As they turned into the left passage, a distant sound echoed through the tunnel behind them, the unmistakable hiss of the pressure door reopening. "They figured out our route," Jack said quietly. "We need to move faster." The group accelerated, jogging now through the dim tunnel. Jack felt Tasso's grip tighten around his neck, the child's breathing becoming more rapid against his ear. Ahead, the tunnel curved slightly before opening into a larger chamber, marked with faded military signage, Junction 38C Maintenance Hub. Mitchell was waiting as promised, a large duffel bag at his feet and a grim expression on his face. "You made good time," he acknowledged before nodding toward the tunnel behind them. "But they're moving faster. The Zephyrian tracking device is more effective than we anticipated. It's picking up trace biological markers along your path." "How long until they reach us?" Jack asked, allowing Tasso to slide from his back. "Minutes, not hours. We need to mask your trail." Mitchell opened the duffel bag, revealing several environmental suits. "These are maintenance EV units. They'll help obscure biological signatures temporarily. The children should fit in the smaller units with some adjustments." As they hastily donned the suits, Mitchell continued his briefing. "The freight elevator is 2 levels down. It can take us directly to Blue Sector without passing through any major junctions. But once we're in motion, the system will register the transport. We'll have security waiting when we arrive." "So we don't arrive where they expect," Jack concluded. "We stop the elevator between levels and access the emergency maintenance shafts." Mitchell nodded. "Exactly. The vertical service tunnels run parallel to all major elevator shafts. They're not on current station schematics, but they're still accessible." Once everyone was suited up, Mitchell led them through a series of increasingly narrow maintenance passages. The environment grew progressively more industrial, exposed conduits, humming machinery, and the occasional burst of steam from pressure valves. It was a stark contrast to the polished public areas of the station, a glimpse into the utilitarian infrastructure that kept New Houston functioning. They reached a massive freight elevator, platform large enough to transport vehicles or heavy equipment. Mitchell activated the call mechanism, and the platform began its lumbering ascent toward them. "Once we're aboard, we'll have approximately 90 seconds before the system registers an unauthorized transport," Mitchell explained. "I've created a false work order, but it won't withstand scrutiny for long." The elevator arrived with a deep mechanical groan. As they boarded, Jack positioned himself protectively near the children, his military instincts automatically calculating defensive positions and escape routes. Mitchell initiated the descent sequence, and the massive platform began to move downward with deliberate slowness. For a few moments, there was only the sound of machinery and their own breathing inside the environmental suits. Then abruptly, the elevator shuddered to a halt. "That's not part of the plan," Jack said quietly. Mitchell's expression darkened as he checked the control panel. "They've overridden the system. Security has locked down all freight transport." A metallic voice echoed through the elevator's communication system. "Attention unauthorized passengers. This transport has been secured under Galactic Assembly security protocols. Remain in position for identity verification and processing." Jack met Mitchell's gaze, a silent communication passing between the two veterans. Mitchell nodded almost imperceptibly and moved toward a recessed panel near the elevator's rear wall. "Plan B," he said, simply activating his comm unit. "Chen, we need that secondary diversion. Now." Through the comm came Dr. Clark's voice. "Initiating in 3, 2, 1. The station's lighting suddenly flickered, then died completely, plunging them into darkness. A moment later, emergency systems engaged, bathing everything in dim red illumination. Power grid fluctuation, Mitchell explained as he worked to remove the recessed panel. Amanda created a surge in the environmental systems. It's triggered emergency protocols station-wide. How long will it last? Jack asked, already ushering the children toward the opening Mitchell had created. 2 minutes, maybe 3. Every system will restart in sequence. Security will be temporarily blind. Beyond the panel lay a narrow vertical shaft with maintenance ladders extending both upward and downward. Mitchell pointed down. 17 rungs, then access the horizontal passage. It leads directly to Blue Sector. Jack helped each child onto the ladder, watching as they descended with surprising agility despite their environmental suits. Amanda followed, then Mitchell. Jack went last, replacing the access panel behind him before beginning his descent. The shaft was tight and dark, illuminated only by the faint red glow of emergency lighting strips. The ladder rungs were cold and slick beneath Jack's gloved hands, designed for utility rather than comfort. As he climbed downward, he could hear the soft sounds of movement below as the others navigated the passage. 17 rungs down, Jack found the others waiting at a horizontal junction. Mitchell was already working on another access panel, his movements efficient despite the cramped conditions. Almost there, he murmured. The safe house is 200 meters through this maintenance tunnel. The panel opened to reveal a narrow passage barely tall enough for the adults to stand upright. They proceeded in single file, the children between Jack and Amanda, with Mitchell leading the way. After several minutes of careful progress, they reached what appeared to be a dead end. Mitchell placed his hand against a specific section of wall, and a hidden scanner hummed briefly before the wall section slid aside, revealing a dimly lit apartment beyond. "Welcome to my private contingency plan," Mitchell said, ushering them inside. "It's not much, but it's off the grid. No official record, no connection to standard station systems." The space was Spartan but functional, a main living area with basic furnishings, a small kitchen unit, and 2 doors leading to what Jack presumed were sleeping quarters. The most notable feature was the complete absence of windows or external viewports, a rarity on a space station where most residences featured at least token views of space. "Completely shielded," Mitchell explained as the hidden door closed behind them. "The entire apartment is wrapped in a Faraday cage with additional biothermal masking. It was originally designed as a panic room for military command in case of hostile takeover." Amanda helped the children remove their environmental suits, immediately checking their vital signs. "They're exhausted," she reported, "especially the youngest. They need rest and proper nutrition." "The kitchen is stocked," Mitchell assured her, "and there are medical supplies in the cabinet near the sleeping quarters." While Amanda tended to the children, Jack and Mitchell conferred in the main living area, speaking in low tones. "How long can we stay here?" Jack asked. "Indefinitely in theory. The life support systems are independent, and I've stockpiled enough supplies for months. But practically speaking," Mitchell's expression was grim, "the Zephyrians won't give up. Their tracking technology will improve, and every hour these children are missing increases the diplomatic pressure on Earth's government. What about your evidence, the documentation of their genetic experimentation?" "Incomplete. We have testimony from defectors, some intercepted communications medical data that suggests unethical practices, but nothing conclusive enough to force an assembly investigation." Mitchell glanced toward the children. "Until now." Jack understood the implication. These children, particularly Alara with her first-hand knowledge of the program, represented the missing piece of their case. But using them as witnesses would mean exposing them to precisely the danger they were fleeing. "There's something else you should see," Mitchell said, activating a small data terminal on the living area's central table. A holographic display flickered to life, showing security footage from what appeared to be the main assembly chamber. In the center of the image stood a tall, regal Zephyrian female, her blue skin adorned with the elaborate markings that indicated high status. Unlike the children whose silver eyes appeared uniform, hers contained subtle patterns, concentric rings that seemed to pulse with internal light. When she spoke, her translator rendered her melodic language into precisely articulated English. "The return of my offspring is non-negotiable," High Governor Naravek stated, addressing a panel of human officials. "Their abduction constitutes a direct violation of Assembly Treaty statutes. Earth's government has 24 hours to recover and return them before diplomatic consequences are initiated." One of the human officials, a woman in the formal attire of Earth's diplomatic corps, responded with evident tension. Hi, Governor, we assure you that every resource is being directed toward locating your children. However, we have received concerning reports about their physical condition and treatment. The Zephyrian cut her off with a sharp gesture. The developmental protocols of the Zephyrian hierarchy are protected under Assembly non-interference statutes. Your cultural opinions are irrelevant. Her silver eyes narrowed. 24 hours, Representative Chen, after which Earth's provisional membership in the Assembly will be subject to immediate review. The recording ended, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. That was broadcast station-wide 30 minutes ago, Mitchell explained. They're framing it as a kidnapping with humans as the perpetrators. The diplomatic corps is in damage control mode, but the threat is clear. Either return the children or Earth loses its Assembly membership. The implications were staggering. Earth's economy had been transformed by Assembly membership, access to interstellar trade routes, advanced technology transfers, protective alliances with established species. Losing that status would be catastrophic for human civilization. They're willing to sacrifice our entire species' future to maintain their developmental protocols. Jack observed the bitterness evident in his voice. It's more than that, came a small voice from behind them. Alara had approached silently, her environmental suit removed to reveal her slender blue form. Mother does not truly care about our return. We are replaceable. What matters is maintaining control of the narrative. Jack knelt to the child's level. What do you mean? The Genetic Advancement Initiative is not merely about Zephyrian evolution. It is about power. 7 species within the Assembly have formed a coalition sharing genetic research and developmental methodologies. They maintain dominance by advancing their capabilities beyond other members. Alara's silver eyes seemed to dim slightly. If their methods became known, there would be consequences from the neutral adjudicators. These 7 species, they're the founding members of the Assembly, Mitchell asked. Alara nodded. They present a unified position in all Assembly votes. No measure passes without their approval. Earth was granted provisional membership only because they believed humans could provide useful genetic diversity for their research. The implication hung in the air like a physical weight. Humanity had been admitted to the Assembly not as equals, but as potential research subjects. How do you know all this? Jack asked gently. I was to be my mother's successor, Alara explained. My early genetic markers showed exceptional cognitive potential. I was given access to restricted information as part of my preparation. Her silver eyes met Jack's directly. But my subsequent development proved disappointing. My empathic responses were deemed excessive, my questioning of methodologies inappropriate. I became a liability rather than an asset. The child's clinical assessment of her own failure struck Jack as profoundly wrong, the perversion of natural parental love into cold genetic calculus. Your empathy isn't a flaw, Jack said firmly. It's what made you protect your siblings. It's what gave you the courage to escape. Alara considered this, her head tilting in that now familiar, contemplative gesture. Among Zephyrians, such traits are considered evolutionary weaknesses, but I have observed that humans value them. We do, Jack confirmed. Not always perfectly and not every human, but at our best, we recognize that compassion and empathy are strengths, not weaknesses. Mitchell cleared his throat, bringing the focus back to their immediate situation. The children's testimony could force an Assembly investigation, but only if presented through proper channels. We need to reach the neutral adjudicators directly bypassing Earth's diplomatic corps. Are they on the station? Jack asked. No, they maintain a separate facility, a space station called the Arbiter, positioned at the boundary of Assembly territory. It's designed to be politically neutral ground. How do we get there? Mitchell's expression was grim. That's the problem. All official transport to the Arbiter requires Assembly authorization. With the station on security lockdown and Earth's government desperately trying to appease the Zephyrians, we won't get clearance. What about unofficial transport? Jack pressed. A slight smile crossed Mitchell's weathered features. I might know someone, former Air Force pilot who now runs independent shipping contracts. She has a modified transport vessel that doesn't always appear on official registries. Can she be trusted? With this, Mitchell considered. She lost her son during an educational exchange with the Centaurians 3 years ago. Official reports said it was an accident, but she never believed it. She's been looking for answers ever since. Jack nodded, understanding the implication. Someone with a personal stake in exposing assembly secrets would be motivated beyond money or politics. Make the contact, he decided, but we still need to get from here to wherever her ship is docked. With the entire station looking for us, that won't be easy. One problem at a time, Mitchell replied, activating his comm unit to arrange the contact. Jack returned his attention to Alara, who had remained silently observant during the exchange. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. The young Zephyrian regarded him with those unsettling silver eyes. "You and your associates are risking your lives and your species standing to protect us. I do not understand such behavior, but I recognize its significance." She paused. "I wish to help in whatever capacity I can." "You've already helped more than you know," Jack assured her. "The information you have provided could protect countless other children, Zephyrian and human alike." "If we reach these adjudicators," Alara pointed out with pragmatic caution. "We'll get there," Jack promised, though he knew better than to offer guarantees in combat situations, and this was rapidly becoming exactly that. As Mitchell concluded his communication and Amanda continued tending to the younger children in the adjacent room, Jack felt the familiar tension of pre-mission focus settling into his muscles, the heightened awareness, the calculated calm that had served him through countless dangerous operations. 3 alien children hunted by their own mother, a station-wide security lockdown, an interstellar diplomatic crisis with Earth's future hanging in the balance, and somewhere in the vast expanse of space, a neutral court that might have the power to stop a systemic abuse that spanned multiple species and star systems. Jack Reynolds had faced long odds before in deserts and mountains and urban combat zones across Earth, but never with stakes quite this high. As Mitchell returned from making his contact, Jack noted the grim set of the older man's features. "Problems?" he asked quietly. "Captain Rivera can get her ship to Auxiliary Dock 9 in 6 hours," Mitchell replied. "But there's a complication. The Zephyrians have deployed what they're calling containment specialists throughout the station, some kind of elite security force with enhanced capabilities." "Enhanced how are you, Mom?" "Unknown, but station security personnel have been ordered to defer to them completely, and they're authorized to use necessary force to recover the children." Jack absorbed this, mentally recalculating their odds. 6 hours is a long time to stay hidden with those specialists searching. "It gets worse," Mitchell continued. "The tracking technology they've deployed is advancing rapidly. It's like they're adapting it in real time, improving its sensitivity. Even this safe house won't mask the children's biological signatures indefinitely." The implication was clear. Their sanctuary was temporary at best. The clock was ticking. "Then we changed the game," Jack decided, years of combat adaptability asserting itself. "If we can't hide indefinitely, we create a diversion they can't ignore." "What kind of diversion?" Jack's expression hardened, the weathered lines of his face settling into resolute determination. "The kind that forces them to reveal their true priorities to the entire station. Because from what Alara has told us, the High Governor cares more about protecting her secrets than recovering her children." "That's a dangerous gamble, Reynolds." "Maybe," Jack acknowledged. "But right now all the power's on their side. They're controlling the narrative, the search, the consequences. It's time we change that." Mitchell studied him for a long moment before nodding slowly. "What do you have in mind?" Jack glanced toward the room where the Zephyrian children rested, 3 small lives caught in the machinery of interstellar politics and evolutionary ambition. In his decades of military service, he'd fought for many causes: national security, regional stability, humanitarian intervention. But this felt more fundamental, more primal in its simplicity. Children should not be experiments. They should not be starved or beaten in the name of advancement. They should not live in fear of being culled if they failed to develop according to some predetermined genetic schedule. Some principles transcended species treaties and diplomatic consequences. "We're going to show the station exactly what's been happening to these children," Jack said finally. "And we're going to make sure everyone, human and alien alike, has to choose which side they're on." The plan was beginning to form in his mind, dangerous certainly, but with the potential to shift the balance of power just enough to get the children safely off station. It would require precise timing, specialized equipment, and at least one major security breach. All things considered, it wasn't the worst mission briefing he'd ever received. The command center of Major Thomas Mitchell's safe house had transformed into a war room. Holographic displays flickered with station schematics and security patrol routes, while communication channels monitored official transmissions. Jack Reynolds stood at the central table, his weathered hands braced against its edge as he studied the tactical overlay. Auxiliary Dock 9 is here, Mitchell indicated, highlighting a small docking bay in the station's industrial sector. Minimal civilian traffic, primarily used for maintenance vessels. Captain Rivera can get her ship there in 4 hours now, not 6. She's pushing her engines to the limit. Jack nodded, mentally calculating distances and security concentrations. The Zephyrian containment teams are focusing their search here, here, and here. He pointed to 3 major residential sectors. But they've left lighter coverage in the industrial zones, assuming we'd avoid areas with restricted civilian access. A reasonable assumption for most fugitives, Mitchell agreed. Not so much for a former Marine with station security credentials. From the adjacent medical area, Dr. Amanda Clark emerged, her expression tight with professional concern. Alara's condition is deteriorating, she reported quietly. The bruising extends deeper than I initially thought. There's significant internal trauma consistent with repeated physical discipline. She needs proper medical attention, not just field treatment. Jack's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm, the controlled response of a veteran compartmentalizing emotion during mission planning. How long can she manage? She's remarkably resilient and determined not to show weakness in front of her siblings. Amanda shook her head slightly. But she's in pain, Jack. Constant pain. This information settled like a physical weight on Jack's shoulders. Every hour they remained in hiding was another hour of suffering for a child who had already endured too much. We stick to the plan, he decided. 4 hours until extraction. In the meantime, we move forward with the diversion. Mitchell nodded, turning to a secure communication terminal. I've contacted the individuals you specified. Former military, all of them with technical specialties. They're ready to assist, no questions asked. And they understand the risks, Jack asked. Fully. These are people who've had their own concerns about the assembly for years. Your actions just gave them the catalyst they needed. Jack moved to check on the children, finding them in the small sleeping quarters. The 2 younger Zephyrians, Marin and Tasso, had finally succumbed to exhaustion, their slender blue forms curled together on the narrow bed. Alara sat beside them, her posture rigidly upright, despite the evident pain it caused her. Her silver eyes tracked Jack's entrance immediately. Your medical associate is concerned about my physical condition, she stated without preamble. Her concern is unnecessary. I am functional. The clinical self-assessment reminded Jack painfully of battlefield triage soldiers downplaying their injuries to remain in the fight. No child should speak of their own suffering with such detached stoicism. It's okay to acknowledge pain, Alara, he said gently, sitting on the edge of the bed. It doesn't make you weak. The young Zephyrian regarded him with that unsettling silver gaze. Among my people, to acknowledge physical limitation is to invite culling. Only optimal specimens are permitted to continue. You're not among your people now, Jack replied. You're with humans, and we have different values. Yes, Alara said, a note of something like wonder entering her mechanically translated voice. I have observed this. You expend significant resources protecting and nurturing even suboptimal individuals. It is inefficient from an evolutionary perspective. Maybe efficiency isn't the only measure of a society's worth. Alara considered this, her head tilting in that now familiar contemplative gesture. In the breeding facilities I accessed restricted historical archives. Earth's development has been remarkably inefficient by Zephyrian standards. Multiple competing governments, preservation of diverse genetic lineages, allocation of resources to individuals, regardless of productive capacity. She paused. Yet you achieved interstellar capability despite these inefficiencies. Maybe because of them, Jack suggested. Diversity brings different perspectives, different solutions. Compassion builds loyalty and cooperation. Every person contributing in their own way, not just the ones deemed optimal by some arbitrary standard. An alternative evolutionary pathway, Alara mused. One that values collective adaptation over individual perfection. Her silver eyes studied Jack with renewed intensity. Is that why you are helping us? Because your evolutionary pathway has selected for protective behaviors toward all juvenile organisms. Jack smiled slightly at her analytical framing of what humans would simply call empathy. Something like that, though I think it's simpler too. When I look at you and your siblings, I don't see alien children or diplomatic incidents. I just see kids who need help. For the first time, Jack observed a physical change in Alara's iridescent skin patterns, a subtle shift that rippled across her features like sunlight on water. Whether it indicated emotion understanding or some other internal state, he couldn't tell. The younger ones should sleep for several hours, she said after a moment. Their metabolic efficiency allows rapid recovery with sufficient rest. And you need rest too. I will remain functional until our extraction is complete. Jack recognized the stubborn determination behind the clinical language, the same iron will that had allowed this child to plan and execute an escape from supposedly secure confinement, protecting her siblings in the process. He would not insult her by arguing. All right, he nodded, but Dr. Clark will give you something for the pain. No arguments. Even the most efficient soldiers know that managing pain improves performance. Alara blinked slowly, perhaps her species' equivalent of reluctant agreement. Acceptable, if framed as a performance enhancement rather than a concession to weakness. Jack returned to the command center where Mitchell and Amanda were finalizing communication protocols for their improvised resistance network. The children, Mitchell inquired. The younger two are sleeping. Alara's monitoring them. Jack's expression darkened. She talks about herself like a malfunctioning piece of equipment, Mitchell. These people have their children evaluating their own worth based on genetic optimization. I know, Mitchell replied grimly. The more I learn about the inner workings of the assembly, the more I question whether Earth's membership was ever in our best interest. We were so eager for the stars that we didn't look closely at what we were aligning ourselves with. One battle at a time, Jack refocused on the tactical display. Our diversion needs to be substantial enough to create genuine confusion, but controlled enough not to cause panic or harm civilians. My contacts have access to the environmental and communication systems in these 6 sectors. Mitchell indicated areas on the station map. They can create a series of cascading technical malfunctions that will force security to spread their resources thin. Good. In the broadcast system, Chen has secured temporary access through her medical override codes. We'll have approximately 90 seconds before they trace and terminate the connection. Jack nodded, mentally reviewing each component of their plan. After decades of military operations, he had developed an instinct for identifying weak points and contingencies. This plan had too many for comfort, but their options were limited by time and resources. The Zephyrian tracking technology is the wild card, he noted. If it's as adaptable as you suggested, our diversion might not hold their attention for long. That's why the second phase is critical, Mitchell replied. We're not just creating a distraction, we're forcing a public confrontation that they can't ignore without revealing their true priorities. The next 2 hours passed in meticulous preparation. Mitchell's contacts positioned themselves strategically throughout the station, awaiting the signal to initiate their coordinated systems disruptions. Amanda prepared the medical evidence. They would broadcast detailed scans of Alara's injuries, comparative analyses showing long-term malnutrition, biological markers indicating repeated exposure to experimental compounds. Jack focused on the most dangerous aspect of the plan, the physical extraction route from the safe house to Auxiliary Dock 9. It would require traversing 3 major station sectors, each with its own security challenges. He plotted primary and alternate pathways, identified potential choke points, and prepared tactical responses for various security encounters. As the extraction time approached, Jack gathered everyone for a final briefing. Once we initiate the diversion, events will move quickly, he explained. Security will be forced to respond to multiple system malfunctions across the station. During this confusion, Dr. Clark will broadcast the medical evidence using her emergency access codes. Mitchell continued, the broadcast will go to all public screens and communication devices station-wide. It will also be transmitted directly to the neutral adjudicators at the Arbiter station. Once the evidence is public, the Zephyrians will be forced to address it. They can't simply dismiss it as human interference. Amanda added, the medical evidence is irrefutable, even allowing for different cultural practices. The systematic abuse and experimentation documented in these scans violates the Assembly's own charter provisions regarding sentient rights. Jack turned to Alara, who stood listening with solemn attention. While this is happening, we'll move you and your siblings to Auxiliary Dock 9. Captain Rivera will be waiting with her ship. She'll transport you directly to the Arbiter Station, where you'll be under the protection of the neutral adjudicators. And if we encounter resistance, Alara asked, her silver eyes unblinking. Jack met her gaze steadily. Then we deal with it. You focus on keeping your siblings calm and moving quickly. Mitchell checked the chronometer. 30 minutes until Captain Rivera reaches the dock. We should prepare to move. The final preparations were made with efficient precision. The children were dressed in modified environmental maintenance uniforms, ordinary enough not to draw immediate attention, but equipped with basic biosignature masking technology. Jack and Mitchell armed themselves with the limited non-lethal weapons available: shock batons designed for crowd control and personal defense canisters that would temporarily disorient most species' sensory systems. Amanda established the broadcast uplink, her medical credentials providing the necessary access to override standard communication protocols. "Ready when you are," she confirmed. Jack performed a final equipment check, the routine as familiar to him as breathing after countless military operations. When he looked up, he found Alara watching him intently. "You have done this before," she observed. "Planned extractions under hostile conditions." "A few times," Jack acknowledged, "though usually in desert terrain, not space stations." "Were you successful?" Jack paused, memories of past operations, some triumphant, others tragic, flashing through his mind. "Not always, but often enough." Alara nodded, apparently satisfied with his honesty. "My siblings and I will comply with all directives to maximize operational efficiency." Despite the gravity of the situation, Jack felt a small smile tug at his mouth. Even facing mortal danger, the child maintained her analytical perspective, assessing, adapting, optimizing. In different circumstances, her methodical mind might have made her an exceptional tactician. "I know you will," he said. "That's why we're going to succeed." Mitchell's comm unit activated with a soft chime. "Captain Rivera is approaching Auxiliary Dock 9. ETA 28 minutes. Jack nodded. "Initiate the diversion." Mitchell sent the coded signal to his network of contacts. For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then in rapid succession, alerts began sounding throughout the station. Environmental systems in multiple sectors reported sudden pressure fluctuations. Communication networks experienced cascading failures. Emergency lighting activated in some areas while deactivating in others. On the command center's monitors, they watched as security personnel scrambled to respond to the apparently random technical malfunctions spreading across New Houston Station. "Phase 1 successful," Mitchell reported. "Security resources are dispersing exactly as predicted." Jack turned to Amanda. "Now." She activated the broadcast sequence, her fingers moving with precise efficiency across the medical terminal. "Transmission initiating. Broadcasting on all public channels and direct link to the Arbiter Station." Throughout New Houston, every public screen and personal communication device suddenly displayed the same images, detailed medical scans of a Zephyrian child's injuries. Comparative analyses showing systematic malnutrition, biological markers indicating experimental genetic modification. Accompanying the images was Amanda's clinical narration, her professional voice describing in precise medical terminology the evidence of long-term abuse and experimentation. The subject displays multiple healing fractures consistent with repeated physical trauma. Malnutrition indicators suggest deliberate caloric restriction over an extended period. Most concerning are the cellular markers indicating non-consensual genetic modification using compounds prohibited under Assembly Medical Charter, Section 17. Jack watched the station's security channels erupt with confusion as the broadcast cut through the artificial emergency. Orders and counter-orders flew as different authorities attempted to respond to both the technical malfunctions and the explosive public revelation. "They're scrambling," Mitchell observed with grim satisfaction. "The diplomatic corps is demanding explanation from the Zephyrian delegation while security is trying to trace the broadcast source." "How long until they pinpoint Amanda's location?" Jack asked. "Minutes at most. We need to move now." Jack turned to the children, finding all three awake and alert, their silver eyes reflecting the emergency lighting. "Stay close. Move quickly. No questions until we're safe." They exited the safe house through a secondary passage. Mitchell had prepared a narrow maintenance shaft that bypassed the main corridors. Jack led the way with Alara guiding her siblings immediately behind him. Mitchell followed with Amanda bringing up the rear. The passage emerged into a utility corridor used primarily by maintenance drones. They moved swiftly through the dimly lit space, encountering no resistance for the first 100 meters. Then, as they approached a junction leading to the next sector, Jack raised his hand in a silent signal to halt. Ahead, two human security officers were visible, seemingly responding to one of the engineered system malfunctions. Jack gestured for the others to remain hidden while he assessed the situation. The officers appeared distracted, their attention focused on a malfunctioning environmental control panel. Jack signaled to Mitchell, who nodded in understanding. Together they approached from behind, moving with the silent efficiency of trained combatants. The officers never had a chance to react. Jack and Mitchell applied precisely calibrated pressure to a specific point at the base of their necks, rendering them unconscious without injury. They dragged the unconscious men into a recessed maintenance alcove where they would eventually recover with nothing worse than headaches. Clear, Jack signaled, and the group continued forward. They progressed through two more sectors without significant incident, benefiting from the widespread confusion created by their diversion. Security personnel were spread thin, responding to multiple simultaneous system failures across the station. The few patrols they encountered were easily avoided using Mitchell's intimate knowledge of the station's service pathways. As they neared the industrial sector containing Auxiliary Dock 9, Jack's comm unit activated with an incoming transmission from Captain Rivera. "I'm docked and ready," came a woman's terse voice. "But we've got company. Two Zephyrian vessels just entered station space requesting emergency docking clearance." Jack exchanged a concerned glance with Mitchell. "Reinforcements?" "Likely," Mitchell confirmed grimly. "The broadcast worked too well. They're bringing in additional resources to contain the situation." "How long until they dock?" Jack asked. "Station control is delaying authorization due to the system malfunctions," Rivera replied. 15 minutes, maybe 20. After that, this place will be swarming with Zephyrian security. "We're 10 minutes out from your position," Jack informed her. "Hold tight." They increased their pace, the urgency of their situation adding new tension to every movement. The children kept up admirably, though Jack noted Tasso, the smallest, beginning to struggle. Without breaking stride, he lifted the child onto his back, feeling the slight weight settle against him with surprising trust. They had nearly reached the final corridor leading to Auxiliary Dock 9 when disaster struck. A patrol of 4 Zephyrian containment specialists appeared ahead, their silver armor gleaming under the emergency lighting. Unlike the human security forces they had avoided, these aliens moved with predatory focus, their elongated heads swiveling systematically as they scanned the area. Jack signaled an immediate halt, pulling the group back around a corner before they were spotted. "Mitchell," he whispered urgently, "alternative route." The older man shook his head. "Not to Dock 9. The only other access is through the main processing center, which will be heavily guarded." Jack assessed their options with rapid tactical calculation. They couldn't go forward without encountering the Zephyrian patrol. They couldn't go back without losing their extraction window. And they couldn't remain in place without risking detection by the increasingly sensitive tracking technology. A decision crystallized in his mind, the kind he had made countless times in combat when all options carried significant risk. "Amanda," he said quietly, "take the children and follow Mitchell through the secondary maintenance shaft." He nodded towards a narrow access panel partially concealed behind storage containers. "It'll be tight, but you'll fit. It emerges 50 meters from Dock 9. "What about you?" Amanda asked, immediately recognizing his intention. "I'm going to give our Zephyrian friends something to chase," Jack replied, his expression hardening into combat readiness. "A human target moving away from the dock will draw their attention. They won't expect the children to be separated from their protector." Mitchell understood immediately. "It's too risky, Reynolds. Those aren't standard security, they're enhanced operatives with combat modifications." "Which makes them perfect for my diversion," Jack countered. "They'll pursue what they perceive as the primary threat, leaving the path to the dock clear for you." Before Mitchell could argue further, Jack removed a small device from his pocket and pressed it into Alara's hand. "This contains everything, all the evidence, all the documentation. Get it to the neutral adjudicators at the Arbiter." The Zephyrian child looked up at him, her silver eyes somehow conveying more emotion than should have been possible on her alien features. "You are implementing a self-sacrifice protocol," she stated, her translator unable to mask the subtle tremor in her voice. "I'm creating a tactical advantage," Jack corrected gently. and I have no intention of being sacrificed. I'll find my own way off station. He turned to Mitchell. Wait until you hear the commotion, then move. Get them to Rivera's ship and don't look back. Without waiting for further discussion, Jack removed his jacket and wrapped it around a small maintenance drone, activating its basic movement protocols. The drone, now carrying his biosignature via the jacket, would move in the opposite direction from Dock 9, creating a decoy for the tracking technology to follow. He then moved towards the quarter junction, calculating angles and timing with the automatic precision of a combat veteran. Drawing a deep breath, he stepped deliberately into view of the Zephyrian patrol, allowed himself to be spotted, then turned and ran, not toward the dock, but deeper into the industrial sector. The reaction was immediate. The Zephyrian operatives emitted a series of sharp clicks that needed no translation to convey their recognition and pursuit. Jack sprinted down the corridor, drawing them away from his companions with each step. Behind him, he could hear the rhythmic impact of the Zephyrians' armored feet against the metal flooring, 4 sets confirming that all had taken the bait. Jack pushed himself to his maximum speed, decades of military conditioning, allowing him to maintain a pace that would have exhausted most men half his age. He navigated the industrial corridors with deliberate efficiency, leading his pursuers through a complex route designed to confuse and separate them. After ensuring sufficient distance from his companions, Jack implemented the next phase of his improvised plan. He activated his comm unit, broadcasting on an open channel that he knew station security would be monitoring. This is Jack Reynolds, former Captain, United States Marine Corps. I am the individual responsible for harboring the Zephyrian children and broadcasting evidence of their abuse. His voice was clear and unwavering. I did so in accordance with basic human moral principles and in defiance of treaties that protect systemic child abuse under the guise of cultural non-interference. He paused at a junction, hearing the Zephyrian pursuit closing in. I am prepared to surrender myself to Earth authorities to face whatever consequences our laws demand. I am not, however, willing to surrender to Zephyrian authorities whose treatment of children violates fundamental sentient rights. The broadcast would be reaching every security officer on the station, and more importantly, being recorded in official logs that even the Zephyrians couldn't easily erase. Jack was creating a public record, ensuring that whatever happened next would not be easily disappeared. As he ducked into a side passage, a blinding flash of energy struck the wall beside him, leaving a scorched crater in the metal. The Zephyrians had deployed weapons, not stunning devices, but lethal energy projectors designed to eliminate, not capture. So much for diplomatic niceties, Jack thought grimly, rolling behind a large cargo container as another energy blast superheated the air where he had stood moments before. Meanwhile, in the narrow maintenance shaft, Mitchell led Amanda and the children toward Auxiliary Dock 9. They moved in tense silence, each aware that their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. When they emerged from the shaft, the dock was visible ahead, a small landing bay currently occupied by a sleek, unmarked transport vessel. A woman waited at the vessel's open hatch. Captain Rivera, her weathered face set in grim determination. She was armed with what appeared to be a modified pulse rifle, scanning the area with the practiced vigilance of someone accustomed to dangerous extractions. "Mitchell," she called in a harsh whisper. "Move at station control, just cleared the Zephyrian vessels for emergency docking. We've got minutes, not hours." The group hurried toward the ship, the children moving with remarkable speed despite their exhaustion. As they reached the vessel, Rivera's eyes widened at the sight of the young Zephyrians. "These are them, the ones from the broadcast." She studied Alara with a mixture of sympathy and rage. "Jesus. They really did a number on you, didn't they, kid?" Alara regarded the human captain with cautious assessment. "Our physical condition is sufficient for travel." A ghost of a smile crossed Rivera's face. "Tough little thing, aren't you, bud? You'll need that where we're going." As they boarded the vessel, Mitchell paused, looking back toward the station interior. "Reynolds should have been right behind us. Something's wrong." Rivera checked her tactical display. "Security channels are going crazy. Sounds like your friend created quite a distraction." Her expression hardened. "But we can't wait. The Zephyrian vessels will dock in less than 10 minutes. If we're still here when they arrive, none of us are leaving." Mitchell faced an impossible choice: wait for Jack and risk everyone's capture, or leave him behind to face the consequences alone. Before he could decide, Alara stepped forward. The human Reynolds implemented a tactical diversion to ensure our extraction, she stated, her silver eyes fixed on Mitchell. Compromising that objective would render his actions ineffective. Logically, we must proceed as planned. The child's clinical assessment cut through Mitchell's emotional conflict, reminding him of the mission's primary objective. Jack had made his choice, knowing exactly what it might cost. Prepare for immediate departure, Mitchell instructed Rivera. Maximum acceleration once we clear the dock. As the vessel's systems engaged warming for launch, Amanda secured the children in acceleration couches designed for human proportions. Alara sat rigidly upright, her posture betraying no emotion, though Amanda noted a subtle shift in her iridescent skin patterns. He knew what he was doing, Amanda said gently. Jack's a survivor. If anyone can find a way through this, it's him. Alara's silver eyes remained fixed on the closing hatch. He implemented a self-sacrifice protocol to ensure our survival. Such behavior is unknown among my people. It's not unknown among humans, Amanda replied, though some of us manage it better than others. The vessel detached from the dock with a metallic clunk, maneuvering thrusters engaging to push it away from the station. Through the viewport, New Houston grew smaller as they accelerated into open space. There was no pursuit yet. The Zephyrian vessels were still docking on the opposite side of the station, and station security seemed too overwhelmed to immediately launch interceptors. We're clear, Rivera announced from the pilot station, setting course for the Arbiter station, ETA 14 hours at maximum sustainable speed. In the passenger compartment, Mitchell activated a small communication terminal. We should monitor station transmissions, see what's happening with Reynolds. The terminal flickered to life, displaying multiple communication channels. Most contained confused chatter as station security attempted to respond to the cascading system failures and the diplomatic chaos unleashed by the medical broadcast. Then suddenly a station-wide announcement cut through the confusion. High Governor Nara Vex herself appeared on the screen, her regal Zephyrian features composed into what translated as cold fury. Attention New Houston Station. This is an official Galactic Assembly security directive. The human Jack Reynolds has committed multiple violations of Assembly treaties and is to be considered extremely dangerous. The image shifted to show Jack's official station identification photo. This individual has abducted Zephyrian citizens, interfered with protected developmental protocols, and disseminated false information designed to damage diplomatic relations. By authority of Assembly Security Statute 47, I am assuming direct command of all station security operations until this threat is neutralized. Mitchell exchanged a concerned glance with Amanda. They're establishing control of the entire station. This goes beyond retrieving the children. Now they're implementing a full containment protocol. Can they do that? Rivera asked from the pilot station. Take over a human station. Technically, yes, Mitchell replied grimly. Under certain emergency provisions of the membership treaty, founding species can assume temporary security control if they declare a significant threat. It's never been invoked before, but the provision exists. The implications were staggering. The Zephyrians weren't just hunting Jack, they were seizing control of humanity's primary off-world installation, potentially establishing a precedent for further interventions. We need to reach the Arbiter faster, Mitchell decided. The evidence has to be presented before they can control the narrative completely. Rivera's hands moved across the navigation controls. I can push the engines beyond sustainable limits. Might get us there in 10 hours instead of 14, but we'll be running on fumes by the end. Do it, Mitchell ordered. As the transport vessel accelerated to dangerous speeds, Alara approached the communication terminal, her silver eyes fixed on the image of Nara Vex, her mother now issuing directives to human security forces. She will eliminate him, the child said quietly, not merely as punishment, but as containment. He knows too much. Mitchell couldn't contradict her assessment. Jack Reynolds had become the most dangerous kind of enemy to the Zephyrian hierarchy, a human with first-hand knowledge of their secret practices and the moral conviction to expose them regardless of personal cost. Jack knew the risks, Mitchell said, though the words felt hollow even to himself. Yet he proceeded despite certainty of negative personal outcome. Alara observed. This is the concept humans designate as a sacrifice for principle. Is it not? Yes, Mitchell confirmed. Though most of us talk about it more than we actually do it. Alara was silent for a moment, her iridescent skin patterns shifting in complex ways. I have accessed restricted information about human history. Your species has engaged in remarkable collective adaptation through individual sacrifice. It appears inefficient in isolated instances, yet produces sustainable social evolution over time. She looked up at Mitchell with those unsettling silver eyes. We must ensure his sacrifice achieves its evolutionary purpose. The child's framing was alien, yet Mitchell recognized the core human value embedded within it, the determination that Jack's actions must not be in vain. We will, he promised. The neutral adjudicators will see this evidence, and they'll act. As the vessel pushed deeper into space, leaving New Houston Station behind, the fate of Jack Reynolds remained unknown. But his actions had set in motion a chain of events that would reverberate throughout the assembly, challenging not just the Zephyrian hierarchy, but the fundamental compact between species that had enabled systematic abuse to flourish under diplomatic protection. On the small transport vessel racing toward the arbiter, three Zephyrian children products of a system that had valued genetic optimization over compassion experienced something their society had deemed evolutionarily unnecessary: protection, without conditioned care, without calculation, sacrifice, without biological imperative. The simple act that had begun it all, feeding hungry children, had expanded into a challenge to an interstellar order built on calculated cruelty, disguised as cultural respect. Whether Jack survived to see the outcome or not, the transformation had begun. And somewhere on New Houston Station, a battle-hardened former Marine fought not just for his life, but for a principle that transcended species and treaties: that no child, human or alien, should suffer in the name of advancement. It was perhaps the most human stand one could take in an increasingly inhuman galaxy. 6 months later, the Starlight Diner looked nothing like its former self. Expanded to 3 times its original size, it now occupied a prominent location near the newly established Interspecies Relations Complex on New Houston Station. Where once empty booths had gathered dust, now beings from a dozen different worlds sat enjoying meals prepared to their specific biological requirements. Behind the counter, supervising a staff of both human and alien chefs, stood Jack Reynolds. The former Marine moved with the same efficiency as always, though a new scar ran along his left temple, and he occasionally favored his right leg when the station's artificial gravity fluctuated. "Order up for table 7, he called, sliding a plate containing a precisely arranged meal toward a young Centaurian server. "Remember, no direct hand contact with Rigelian food. They consider it contamination." The server nodded earnestly, using the specialized serving implements designed for cross-species food handling. Jack turned his attention to the large view screen mounted on the diner's wall, where a formal assembly proceeding was being broadcast live from the Arbiter Station. High-ranking representatives from all member species sat in tiered seating around a central platform where a slender Zephyrian child stood delivering testimony. Alara's voice, translated into multiple languages, carried clearly through the diner. The Genetic Advancement Initiative violated 17 distinct provisions of the Assembly Charter on Sentient Rights. Documentation confirms that 7 founding species collaborated in these violations, using provisional members as unwitting research subjects while simultaneously conducting prohibited experiments on their own offspring. Her testimony was delivered with the precise clarity that Jack had come to associate with her analytical mind. Yet there was something new in her presentation, a passionate conviction that transcended mere facts. She had grown slightly taller in the intervening months, her blue skin showing more complex iridescent patterns, but it was the confidence in her stance that marked the most significant change. "The children recovered from these programs require ongoing medical support and cultural integration assistance," she continued. "The Interspecies Child Welfare Initiative provides these services while implementing oversight protocols to prevent resumption of prohibited practices." As she concluded her testimony, the neutral adjudicators, a species known for their absolute impartiality, indicated their approval of the evidence presented. The formal sanctions against the implicated assembly members would continue, their authority diminished until they demonstrated full compliance with reform practices. Jack allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. The past 6 months had been transformative, not just for him personally, but for the entire structure of human-alien relations. The exposure of the Genetic Advancement Initiative had shattered the facade of assembly unity, revealing the exploitation hidden beneath diplomatic niceties. Quite the speaker, isn't she? Came a familiar voice. Jack turned to find Major Thomas Mitchell, now Ambassador Mitchell, Earth's representative to the Reformed Assembly Council, settling onto a stool at the counter. She always was, Jack replied, pouring coffee without being asked. Though I think she's picking up some human mannerisms in her delivery now. I noticed at least 3 rhetorical techniques that weren't part of her original communication style. Mitchell chuckled. The neutral adjudicators adore her. A Zephyrian child advocating for interspecies protections with the analytical precision of her kind and the moral conviction she's developed through human interaction. She's the perfect bridge. Jack nodded, his eyes returning briefly to the broadcast. And her siblings, thriving in the new developmental program. Mirren's showing remarkable aptitude for cross-species communication. Tasso has become something of an artist, creating visual representations that somehow translate across biological perception barriers. Mitchell sipped his coffee appreciatively. All 3 visit the diner at least twice a week, I understand. They like the apple pie, Jack said with a slight smile. Turns out Zephyrians have quite the sweet tooth when they're allowed to develop natural preferences. A comfortable silence settled between the 2 men veterans who had found themselves unexpectedly fighting for principles larger than national security or human interests. The High Governor arrives tomorrow. Mitchell mentioned casually, though his eyes watched Jack carefully for a reaction. Jack's expression remained neutral. So, I heard. First official visit since the reforms were implemented. Word is she requested specifically to meet with you. Did she now? It wasn't a question. Mitchell leaned forward slightly. The political landscape has shifted dramatically, Reynolds. Naravek's lost considerable power when the initiative was exposed, but she's adapted more successfully than the other implicated leaders. She's positioning herself as a reformer, now embracing the new protections as if they were her idea all along. Politicians, Jack said, with the weary cynicism of a soldier who had seen too many wars rewritten by those who had opposed their successful resolution. Some things are universal across species, it seems. Indeed, Mitchell finished his coffee. Just thought you should be prepared. Whatever her public stance, she hasn't forgotten who started this chain of events. And Zephyrians have long memories. So do Marines, Jack replied evenly. After Mitchell departed, Jack continued his work, moving through the busy diner with practiced efficiency. The establishment had become more than a restaurant. It was the unofficial headquarters of the Interspecies Child Welfare Initiative, a neutral ground where beings from across the assembly could discuss reforms and reconciliation. As his shift ended, Jack retreated to a small office behind the kitchen. There, pinned to the wall beside his faded Marine Corps commendation, was a simple drawing, a child's representation of 3 blue figures standing beside a larger pink one. It lacked artistic sophistication, but conveyed unmistakable meaning across any species barrier. Family. Jack studied it for a moment, then turned to his terminal to review the preparations for tomorrow's high-level diplomatic visit. The Zephyrian High Governor would be accompanied by an extensive security detail of political advisors, and according to the official itinerary, 3 special representatives from the newly formed Youth Advisory Council. He smiled slightly at this last detail. Elara had mentioned nothing about returning to the station during their last communication. It would be good to see her and her siblings in person again, rather than via broadcast. The bell above the Starlight Diner's door chimed softly. Jack turned from the counter, dish towel still in hand. Standing in the entrance were 3 familiar blue-skinned figures dressed in the formal new uniforms of the Youth Advisory Council. Elara, noticeably taller than when Jack had last seen her in person, entered, first followed by Mirren and Tasso. She paused, maintaining her characteristic formal posture, but something different flickered in her silver eyes. Captain Reynolds, she said, her translator device rendering her voice with more natural inflection than it once had. Just Jack, he corrected, gently setting down his towel. I'm not a captain anymore. Haven't been for a long time. A ripple of iridescent patterns cascaded across Alara's skin, what Jack had come to recognize as her equivalent of a smile. According to Assembly records, you have been officially designated as the Interspecies Child Welfare Initiative's Chief Implementation Officer. That merits a title of respect. Jack shook his head with a small smile. Fancy title for a guy who makes sure kids get fed properly. Without warning, Tasso, the smallest of the 3, broke protocol, completely darting forward, to wrap his slender arms around Jack's waist. The unexpected gesture of physical affection from a Zephyrian child left the diner momentarily silent. Mirren followed more hesitantly, joining the embrace with careful precision. Only Alara maintained her formal distance, though the patterns across her skin had intensified. We reviewed human customs regarding reunions. She explained, her analytical tone belied by the emotion evident in her posture. Tasso insisted on implementing the appropriate physical acknowledgement. Jack knelt down, bringing himself to eye level with the children. I'm glad he did. Your tactical diversion was successful. Alara continued, her silver eyes fixed on his. Though the statistical probability of your survival was calculated at less than 17.3%. I've beaten worse odds, Jack replied with a wink to Tasso, who had reluctantly released him but remained close. Alara stepped forward, then extending her hand in the formal human greeting she had clearly practiced. When Jack took it, she surprised him by pulling slightly, initiating a brief but unmistakable embrace. The human concept of thank you is linguistically inadequate, she said quietly, her translator barely capturing the complex emotions in her native speech. But it is the available terminology. Jack placed his hands gently on her shoulders as they separated. You're the ones doing the hard work now. Changing an entire galactic system. I just fed some hungry kids who walked into my diner. An act with an efficiency-to-outcome ratio that defies Zephyrian statistical models. Alara observed with something that sounded remarkably like humor. Mother is still attempting to recalculate her evolutionary algorithms to account for it. Speaking of your mother, Jack said carefully, I understand she's arriving tomorrow. The three children exchanged glances, that silent, Zephyrian communication that never needed translation. Mother has adapted to changing political realities, Alara stated, but her core programming remains complex. We will be present during your meeting to ensure optimal diplomatic outcomes. Jack smiled at her diplomatic phrasing, looking forward to having backup. As the diner's other patrons began to notice the special visitors, Mirren tugged gently at Jack's sleeve. You promised, the middle child said, speaking directly for the first time. Upon our return, the sweet nutrition. Jack laughed, a genuine warm sound that filled the diner. Apple pie, coming right up. He gestured toward their usual booth, now labeled with a small plaque reading, Reserved, Founders of the Initiative. As they settled into the booth that had once hidden three frightened, starving alien children, Jack caught Alara watching him with an intensity that transcended species barriers. We have learned much from humans, she said thoughtfully, but I find myself curious about one particular concept that appears frequently in your historical and cultural records. What concept is that? Jack asked as he served three perfectly proportioned slices of apple pie. Alara considered her words carefully before responding. Family, she said finally. Not as a biological or genetic unit, but as what your species terms a chosen family. A connection not dictated by optimization or hierarchical necessity. Jack felt something tighten in his chest, an emotion he had thought long buried beneath years of loss and isolation. That, he said quietly, is something we could discuss over pie. As he settled into the booth beside them, the former Marine who had once fought in Earth's wars found himself engaged in perhaps his most important mission, yet teaching three alien children about the most human concept of all. And somewhere in the vastness of space, a galaxy was changing, because a hungry child had walked into a diner and a lonely man had offered her food without asking questions. Some revolutions begin with a single meal shared between strangers who become family. As for their mother, Jack Reynolds had faced down dictators, warlords, and enemy combatants throughout his military career. One alien politician reformed or otherwise held little terror for him. Besides, as he had learned through this unexpected chapter of his life, sometimes the most powerful weapon wasn't a gun or a bomb, but a simple meal offered to a hungry child. And in that particular form of warfare, Jack Reynolds considered himself exceptionally well armed.